Greetings fanboys and fangirls, I'm Erod and I'm the Blockbuster Buster. Ever since my Green Hornet review, a lot of you fell under the impression that I hate the Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes movies. So just to clarify, no, I do not hate the Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes movies, and I do not plan to bust either of them. My only beef with them is that they seem to be the Americanized, stylized version of Sherlock Holmes. Almost like they had no confidence in the source material, so they had the action and the spectacle be the centerpiece of the movie, as opposed to the mystery being in the forefront. But the fact of the matter is that I can rant all day long and still not get my point across as effectively unless I share with all of you what my personal perception of Sherlock Holmes is, by reviewing my all-time favorite Sherlock Holmes movie. Young Sherlock Holmes. At a casual glance, one might assume that this is the focus group Hollywood spin-off version of Sherlock Holmes, but in actuality, it's more of the secret origins tale of the world's greatest detective. Hell, there's even a respectful disclaimer at the beginning of the movie, clearly stating that this movie is not in continuity with the books, which is something that most movies that I review should have. While this film may not have any big stars, it does have a star-studded production team. Barry Levinson as the director, Chris Columbus as the writer, and none other than Steven Spielberg as the producer. With such a trifecta of awesomeness assembled, great things were bound to happen.
The game is afoot!
The plot. A series of mysterious suicides begin to occur in turn-of-the-century London, but a young college student named Sherlock Holmes believes that the murders are being caused by frightful drug-induced hallucinations. Together with his best friend, med student John Watson, they embark in an investigation which leads to what will be the first of many great adventures for the duo. Favorite character. Being based on one of the most celebrated book series of all time, this movie is jam-packed with great characters, but more importantly, the filmmakers utilize each and every one of them to the peak of their potential. One of them is the villain, but sadly, I can't say much about him without giving away major plot points, so I'll just say this, that the bad guy kicks ass. And FYI, make sure to watch the movie all the way through the credits, because there's a little Easter egg at the end. Alan Cox as Watson is phenomenal. Seeing him transform from a bumbling coward to a courageous hero is an absolute delight.
But I might get caught, and that would mean trouble.
Trouble? You would let trouble ruin an opportunity for adventure?
I can't afford to jeopardize my medical career.
Weasel.
I'm not a weasel. I am practical.
Weasels are practical.
But my favorite character, no surprise here, is Nicholas Rowe as Sherlock Holmes. This was a very heavy role for a young actor, and Nicholas handles it magnificently, as we see Holmes go from a bright, optimistic young man to the antisocial, eccentric genius that we know him as today. It really hurts my heart to not see Nicholas Rowe in more roles like this. The only two movies that I ever remember seeing him in were Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, in which he plays a stoner that gets shot in the foot. Oh, and then there was that little bit in Seed of Chucky. Priceless. Nonetheless, this movie provides us with the pivotal moments that led him to become the Sherlock Holmes that we know and love. Favorite line. My favorite line comes in the form of a witty retort to bumbling Inspector Lestrade's stubborn close-mindedness.
A great detective relies on perception, intelligence, and imagination.
Where'd you get that rubbish from?
It's framed on the wall behind you.
Ooh, burn! Favorite scene. The awesome scenes are aplenty, but if I have to pick a favorite, I would have to go with the final fight between Holmes and the villain, which consists of a sword fight atop a frozen pond. The emotional buildup comes to its crescendo, as Holmes is going up against a superior opponent. All the while, the ice underneath their feet could crack and swallow them at any moment. And while this might not be the bombastic high-speed extravaganza that are the new films, it still holds its own, and is far more meaningful than your average run-of-the-mill action sequences. Elementary, my dear Legion. Elementary. Final verdict. As you watch this movie, you may notice a lot of similarities with other films. For starters, I'm not surprised that this movie was written by Chris Columbus, who went on to direct the first two Harry Potter films, as a lot of the themes and dynamics between Watson Holmes and his girlfriend Elizabeth are similar to that of the characters in the Harry Potter movies. Hell, I even heard that pages from the young Sherlock Holmes script were used during the auditions to Harry Potter. Oh, and by the way, does this scene look familiar to you? Yup, Wild Wild West completely knocked it off. Oof, West, you are on my list! And before I forget, this film holds the distinction of being the first one to use integrated computer animation, and it's pretty impressive how it still holds up today. On a side note, this particular effect was created by none other than John Lasseter, the director of Toy Story and the head of Pixar Animation Studios. Ultimately, this isn't just one of my favorite movies. This is the film that introduced me to Sherlock Holmes and transformed me into one of his most devoted fans. So again, excuse me if I don't go crazy over the new action-packed movies. This movie, however, I can recommend with plenty of confidence. 10 points on the badassitude meter. Gather the family and check it out. And you know I'm not lying, because after all, once you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth.
The game is afoot.
Check out my website, suckers!